Welcome to the deep dive, where we take that intricate stack of source material you shared with us and really pull out the critical knowledge you need.
And today we are cutting through a period of, well, intense global instability.
Absolutely. Alliances are feeling brittle all of a sudden, and trade policies that seemed set in stone yesterday are just, dissolving overnight.
That's really the core tension in all of this material, isn't it? We're seeing a world where technological competition, internal politics in major democracies, and of course, kinetic conflicts like Ukraine are all just tangled up.
It's not just diplomacy anymore.
No, it's an ideological stress test, a real stress test of the entire Western alliance system.
So our mission today is to synthesize this complex picture for you. We'll be diving into the fallout from the new U.S. national security strategy, that growing rift with Europe.
And we'll look at the tightrope European leaders are walking on Ukraine, both on peace plans and on the frozen Russian assets.
Then we'll unpack a dramatic reversal in U.S.-China AI chip policy and wrap up with some crucial developments in global security, space, and medicine.
It's a lot to get through.
Okay, let's unpack this. And we really have to start with those startling ideological tensions that are bubbling up between the U.S. and Europe. I mean, this is far beyond the typical diplomatic disagreements.
It really is.
The alarm bells in the EU are ringing loudly, especially after the release of the new U.S. National Security Strategy, the NSS.
It felt like a document that challenged the entire sort of fundamental direction of the European project.
And the language they use.
Unprecedentedly provocative. I mean, the NSS cites the, and I'm quoting here, growing influence of patriotic European parties as a bright spot.
And European officials immediately saw that as active, high-level U.S. support for, well, far-right movements on their continent.
Right, and you saw leaders push back instantly. European Council President Antonio Costa, he really put his finger on the core concern. He said he understands not all views will align, but...
But when the U.S. strategy calls for cultivating resistance to Europe's current trajectory, that's different.
Exactly. It's interpreted as an effort to destabilize or, redirect Europe's internal politics, but from across the Atlantic.
And that's the ideological friction?
That's it. And we heard this reinforced directly from U.S. President Trump, who condemned the continent publicly. He said Europe is going in some bad directions, which he called very bad for the people. It set a tone of deep skepticism.
So that's the context, a profoundly difficult one. And then right in the middle of all this, the EU imposes a massive fine on Elon Musk's social media platform X.
A huge fine. Staggering, really.
Yeah.
$120 million, which is about $140 million.
Handed down by EU tech authorities.
And the EU's justification was very by the book. They said it was strictly on compliance grounds, that X had violated digital transparency and content management rules.
Things like withholding data from researchers.
Precisely. That, an incomplete ad repository and deceptive design in the whole blue check verification system. They stressed it was about regulation, not censorship.
But the reaction from Washington? Well, they did not see it that way at all.
Not even close. The U.S. condemned the fine, framing it as unfairly targeting American companies. And this is where you see this powerful alignment between the NSS's broader concerns and this specific regulatory dispute.
So you had senior figures weighing in.
Oh, yes. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, FCC Chairman Brendan Carr. They all framed it as an attack on free speech.
So what's fascinating here is, it seems like high-level security strategy is now linking geopolitical trajectory with these very specific regulatory actions.
That's the key takeaway. You have to remember, the NSS had already warned of a decline in democratic norms in Europe, and it specifically cited censorship of free speech.
So from the U.S. perspective, this isn't just a fine.
No. From their perspective, the EU's attempts to regulate big tech are an erosion of core values disguised as bureaucracy. But from the EU side, they see it as protecting citizens from disinformation. It's just a core clash of democratic philosophies.
And that deep ideological rift, it just makes Europe's most urgent security challenge even more complicated. The war in Ukraine. European leaders are on a genuine tightrope. They're trying to support Kyiv while managing this incredibly difficult relationship with the U.S.
The anxiety across Europe is visceral. You can feel it in the sources. The core fear is that if Russia is perceived to be rewarded with Ukrainian territory,
even in a quick peace deal.
Right. Then it just validates the aggression and emboldens Moscow to attack other European countries later on.
And this isn't some abstract fear, is it? We're seeing tangible incidents. There's been confirmed drone chaos at airports in Germany, Denmark, Belgium.
Railway sabotage in Poland, a clear uptick in cyber attacks. This is happening now.
And that anxiety is only made worse by the U.S. position. The NSS accuses Europeans of having unrealistic expectations for the war's end.
Which suggests Washington is pushing for a rapid settlement. European leaders are worried Trump wants a quick fix that stops the fighting but doesn't actually establish real security guarantees.
So it just pauses the conflict.
It just sets up a future one.
And yet, despite that tension, diplomatic work seems to be moving. UK leader Starmer insisted Ukraine needs hard-edged security guarantees. But he also, strangely, praised the U.S. president for progressing peace talks the furthest we've got in the 4 years.
It's a contradiction, but it shows how delicate this is. That progress is fragile, though, because of the core sticking point, territory.
Kyiv won't budge on that.
Not an inch. They're finalizing a revised 20-point peace plan for the U.S., but the resolute refusal to give up any Ukrainian territories. That's a constitutional and moral line for President Zelensky.
Which brings us to the guarantees themselves. If Ukraine won't compromise on territory, what guarantees are even on the table?
Well, Zelensky's focus is clear. He wants binding legislative measures from the U.S. Congress. That's the most powerful commitment he can get.
And he's skeptical of the European guarantees.
He characterized them as a coalition of the willing. I mean, it involves 30 countries, but the fundamental unanswered question is what happens if Russia renews its aggression after a peace treaty is signed? What would this coalition actually do?
The guarantee has to survive the peace.
It has to.
And none of this even touches on Ukraine's desperate need for cash. Which brings us back to that very controversial debate over frozen Russian assets.
They need about $15 billion annually just for their prioritized requirements list. Right now, there's an $800 million shortfall this year.
Which was partly helped by a big donation from the Netherlands.
A $700 million donation, yes. But the global financial community is pushing back hard on the idea of seizing Russia's frozen assets. Japan, for example, holds about $30 billion in Russian assets.
And they rejected the EU plan for a reparational loan.
They did. They cited serious legal uncertainty and pointed out they were aligning with the U.S. position, which also opposes the idea.
We can't overlook Belgium in all this, can we? They're holding the lion's share of the assets, about $260 billion, and they're demanding that all other G7 countries participate in any plan.
Right. We can see why Belgium, and specifically Brussels, would be the most immediate target for Russian retaliation, both economically and legally, if the EU acts alone.
They'd be completely exposed.
Totally. They're trying to internationalize the risk. Otherwise, Russia could launch targeted legal and economic attacks against Belgian financial institutions. It's an enormous exposure for one country to shoulder.
Wow. Okay, let's pivot to the tech world, because what the U.S. just did with China and AI chips, it's arguably the biggest economic reversal of the year.
It's a seismic shift.
Here's where it gets really interesting. President Trump announced that the U.S. will now allow Nvidia to export its highly advanced H200 AI chips to approved customers in China.
This is a dramatic reversal of the Biden-era restrictions. I mean, those were put in place over very serious concerns about military applications.
And Nvidia is the largest U.S. company by market value. This is not a small deal.
No. And the financial side is complex. Trump initially claimed 25% of the deal would be paid to the U.S. The White House later had to clarify that.
What's the reality?
It's an import tax, collected by Taiwan, where the chips are made, to pay for a security review before they're exported to China. So it's not a direct U.S. corporate tax. It's more of a security fee.
Okay, setting the money aside, the national security implications are what analysts are calling alarming. Why is this H200 chip deal being called a colossal economic and national security failure?
It comes down to the performance jump. One analyst called the policy a massive own goal, noting the H200 is six times more powerful than the H20, which was the previous best chip approved for export.
And that matters because
the H200 is designed for training large language models, LLMs. That's the key technology driving advanced military AI, cyber capabilities. Giving China this chip just dramatically accelerates their timeline for reaching parity.
So Democrats immediately condemned it.
Of course. They warned it provides transformational technology that will directly strengthen China's military.
And Nvidia's defense.
Their argument is that the U.S. maintains its lead because American customers are already moving to the next generation chips, the Blackwell and the future Rubin chips.
Which aren't part of this deal.
Right. So they argue they can capture revenue from China with the H200 without actually compromising the long-term U.S. lead.
But the sources also highlight a lot of uncertainty on China's side, too. They still have to approve the imports.
And that's the twist. Experts say Beijing is driven by paranoia and pride. Paranoia about being dependent on U.S. chips and pride in pushing their own domestic alternatives. So the U.S. might have opened the door, but Beijing could still choose to say no.
Shifting away from that US-EU-China axis, we have a critical security issue coming out of South Africa that deserves some context. President Cyril Ramaphosa issued a really serious warning this week about the global promotion of white supremacist ideology.
Specifically how it's impacting his country. He noted that these false claims of persecution against the Afrikaner minority, which are often promoted internationally by figures like Trump and Musk.
He's saying they threaten South Africa's sovereignty and national security.
Exactly. It's a complex domestic issue being weaponized on the global stage. Ramaphosa pointed out that while these claims are circulating, the reality is that the Afrikaner minority, about 4% of the population, is still many times wealthier than the black majority.
So the concern is about foreign interference.
Yes, these claims are being used to justify foreign interference or even to fund internal destabilization. It's information warfare impacting a nation's cohesion.
Okay, pivoting sharply from those flashpoints to some moments of genuine discovery. We have some excellent news from space and medicine.
It's good to remember science keeps moving forward, regardless of the politics.
Yeah.
We saw NASA astronaut Jonny Kim and 2 Roscosmos cosmonauts return safely after 245 days on the International Space Station.
A long-duration mission. And a successful collaboration, which is a positive sign.
Absolute.
And Kim's research was genuinely groundbreaking. What were some of the highlights?
He was involved in some fascinating work. For one, studying bioprinted tissues with blood vessels in microgravity. That's crucial for our ability to produce complex tissues to treat patients on Earth.
And he also worked on robotics.
Yes, the Surface Avatar study, evaluating the remote command of multiple robots, essential for future deep space exploration, and also developing in-space manufacturing of DNA-mimicking nanomaterials for better drug delivery.
And finally, a significant medical breakthrough that offers real hope. A study in the New England Journal of Medicine on an incurable blood cancer.
Leukemia, specifically.
Yeah.
And the results are striking. Of the 11 patients treated with this pioneering therapy, 7 of them remain disease-free.
And that's between 3 months and 3 years after treatment.
For a traditionally fatal form of leukemia, yes. Doctors are calling it a massive scientific leap.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Well, the core knowledge nuggets today show the shift in U.S. foreign policy isn't just diplomatic, it's profoundly ideological.
It is. It's aggressively stress-testing European alliances. And at the same time, you have Europe fearing a quick, politically convenient peace deal in Ukraine that doesn't solve the underlying problem.
So what here is that the global consensus on security, on trade, even on democratic norms, it's dissolving.
It really is. Every nation is being forced to reevaluate its allies and its long-term goals. We see geopolitics intersecting with internal politics in South Africa, with economic interests in the Nvidia deal, and with regulatory fights like the EU and X. The stability of the post-Cold War order is clearly under assault.
This raises an important question.
Given the stated U.S. national security goal of cultivating resistance to Europe's current trajectory, how might this ongoing debate over using Russian frozen assets, a plan the U.S. opposes, and the U.S. stance against the EU's approach to tech regulation, how might all of that impact the unity of the coalition of the willing that Ukraine is relying on for its future security?
Something for you to mull over until our next deep dive.